dauða Sinfjötla, of Sinfjötli's death. It has been pointed out that the Helgi tradition, coming originally from Denmark, was early associated with that of the Volsungs, which was of German, or rather of Frankish, origin. See introductory note to Helgakviða Hundingsbana. The connecting links between these two sets of stories were few in number, the main point being the identification of Helgi as the son of Sigmund Volsung's son. Another son of Sigmund, however, appears in the Helgi poems, though not in any of the poems dealing with the Volsung cycle proper. This is Sinfjötli, whose sole function in the extent Helgi lays is to have a wordy dispute with Gothman Grandmason. Sinfjötli's history is told in detail in the early chapters of the Volsung saga. The twin sisters of Sigmund Volsungsson, Signy, had married Siggeir, who hated his brother-in-law by reason of his desire to possess a sword which had belonged to Odin and had been won by Sigmund. Having treacherously invited Volsung and his 10 sons to visit him, Siggeir slew Volsung and captured his sons, who were set in the stocks. Each night a wolf, some men say that she was Siggeir's mother, came out of the woods and ate up one of the brothers, till on the 10th night Sigmund alone was left. Then, however, Signy aided him to escape, and incidentally to kill the wolf. He vowed vengeance on Siggeir and Signy, who hated her husband, which determined to help him. Convinced that Sigmund must have a helper of his own race, Signy changed forms with a witch, and in disguise sought out Sigmund, who, not knowing who she was, spent 3 nights with her. Thereafter, she gave birth to a boy, who she named Sinfjötli, the yellow-spotted, whom she sent to Sigmund. For a time, they lived in the woods, occasionally turning into wolves, when perhaps Sinfjötli's name. When Sinfjötli was full grown, he and his father came to Siggeir's house, but were seen and betrayed by the 2 sons of Signy and Siggeir, whereupon Sinfjötli slew them. Siggeir promptly had Sigmund and Sinfjötli buried alive, but Signy managed to smuggle Sigmund's famous sword into the grave, and with this, the father and son dug themselves out. The next night, they burned Siggeir's house, their enemy dying in the flames, and Signy, who had at last refused to leave her husband, from a sense of somewhat belated loyalty, perishing with him. Was this story, which the Volsung saga relates in considerable detail, the basis of an old poem which has been lost? Almost certainly it was, although, as I have pointed out, many if not most of the old stories appear to have been handed down rather in prose than in verse, for the Volsunga saga quotes 2 lines of verse regarding the escape from the grave. At any rate, Sinfjötli early became a part of the Volsung tradition, which in turn formed the basis for no less than 15 poems generally included in the Edda collection. Of this tradition, we may recognize 3 distinct paths: the Volsung Sigmund Sinfjötli story, the Helgi story, and the Sigurd story. The last of these 3 being by far the most extensive and suggesting an almost limitless amount of further subdivision. With the Volsung Sigmund Sinfjötli story, the Sigurd legend is connected only by the fact that Sigurd appears as Sigmund's son by his late wife, Hjördis, with the Helgi legend is not connected directly at all. Aside from the fact that Helgi appears as Sigmund's son by his first wife, Borghild, the only link between the Volsung story proper and that of the Helgi is the appearance of Sinfjötli in 2 of the Helgi poems. Originally, it is altogether probable that the 3 stories, or sets of stories, were entirely distinct, and that Sigurd, the familiar Siegfried, had little or nothing to do with the Volsungs of northern mythological heroic tradition than he had to do with Helgi. The annotator, or compiler of the collection of poems preserved in the Codex Regius, having finished with the Helgi lays, had before him the task of setting down the 15 complete or fragmentary poems dealing with the Sigurd story. But before doing this, however, he felt it incumbent on him to dispose of both Sigmund and Sinfjötli, the sole links of the two other sets of stories. He apparently knew of no poem or poems concerning the deaths of these two. Perhaps there were none, though this is unlikely. Certainly, the story of how Sinfjötli and Sigmund died was current in oral prose tradition, and the story the compiler set forth in the prose passage entitled Of Sinfjötli's Death, which in Regius immediately follows the second lay of Helgi Hundingsbane. The relation of this passage to the prose of the Regnsmál is discussed in an introductory note to that poem. Sigmund, the son of Volsung, was a king in the land of Thranks. Sinfjötli was his oldest son, the second was Helgi, and the third Hamund. Borghild, Sigmund's wife, had a brother whose name was unknown. Sinfjötli, her stepson, and Borghild's brother both wooed the same woman, wherefore Sinfjötli slew him. And when he came home, Borghild bade him depart, but Sigmund offered her a ton of money, and this she had to accept. At the funeral feast, Borghild brought an ale. She took poison, a great hornful, and brought it to Sinfjötli. But when he looked into the horn, he saw that it was poison, and said to Sigmund, "Muddy is the drink, father." Sigmund took the horn and drank therefrom. It is said that Sigmund was so hardy that poison might not harm him, either outside or in, and all his sons could withstand poison only without on their skin. Borghild bore another horn to Sinfjötli and bade him drink, and all happened as before. And yet a third time she brought them a horn, and spoke therewith scornful words of him if he should not drink from it. He spoke as before with Sigmund. The later said, "Let it trickle through your beard, son." Sinfjötli drank, and straightway was dead. Sigmund bore him a long way in his arms, and came to a narrow and long fjord, and there was a little boat, and a man in it. He offered to take Sigmund across the fjord, but when Sigmund had borne the corpse out into the boat, then the craft was full. The man told Sigmund to go round the inner end of the fjord. Then the man pushed the boat off and disappeared. King Sigmund dwelt long in Denmark, in Borghild's kingdom, after he had married her. Thereafter Sigmund went south into the land of the Franks, to the kingdom which he had there. There he married Hjördis, the daughter of King Eylimi. Their son was Sigurd. King Sigmund fell in battle, and the sons of Hunding and Hjördis then remarried Alf, the son of King Hjalperk. There Sigurd grew up in his boyhood. Sigmund and all his sons were far above all other men in might and stature and courage and every kind of ability. Sigurd, however, was the foremost of all, and all men call him in the old tales the noblest of mankind and the mightiest leader.